The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We are going to do some super duper quick instant reaction to All Elite Wrestling Rally that we just saw live on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere. I was chatting with a new friend of mine, Tom, on the Twitter DMs talking about the events, and we said, hey, let's chat real quick, and I'd love to get your opinions on some of these crazy announcements that's come up. So please welcome Tom Colohue, PW Torch contributor and freelance journalist. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing good, mate. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for hanging out very instantly, very organically, very late in the evening.
It's 11:30 over here. Yep. I sometimes stay up to watch Raw and SmackDown at 1 a.m., but it's a rare occasion. So I stayed up for AEW, the rally. I thought I'd give it a go, see what it was like, and here we are now.
It was fulfilling, I think. It's fascinating. I think it's easy to get your hopes up very quickly that it's going to be WCW Monday Night Wars. It's very natural of us of a certain age to think that's where we're going to go. But I wanted to get your reaction on this because WCW kind of had NWA, the Super Show. Everything was kind of already in place. AEW starting from the ground up. You have the names, you have the competitors, you have some locations, but other than that, this is going to take a while to grow. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. People, when they talk about the Monday Night Wars, they tend to forget that WCW had been running as a company for a long time beforehand, and they were working with a lot of stars, firstly, that they had built over decades, when you consider, as you say, NWA before it and so on, as well as the NWO is a perfect example of people who were coming over from another company but had already been built very high. They had a lot of groundwork already poured in. And while there's a bit of that in AEW, you look at the long careers of Chris Jericho, you look at the long careers of Cody Rhodes, the Bucks, potentially Kenny Omega, but that's not confirmed one way or the other yet.
Yeah.
They've got the groundworks, the pieces are there, but they don't have the history, they don't have the prestige, as it were, and they're running a bit threadbare at the minute, so it will take a while.
Now, how do you feel, what do you think, just instant reaction about the actual day-to-day operations? Do you think the day-to-day operations and who's going to be booking and all this stuff is going to be going down to the wrestlers? Or are we still yet to see some big names a la JR, Jim Ross, come on board? Would you speculate to that, or do you think this is really a wrestler-run organization? What do you think about that?
Well, at the moment, we only know about 3 executive vice presidents who are the ones who will be making the booking decisions, that being Cody and the Bucks. They've mentioned that there will be more. I'm sure there are more. There'll be a couple. I'd imagine Chris Jericho is one who may have that position but won't vocalize it. And when you talk about potentially JR, I know he's been mentioned quite a lot. He certainly could get involved, but that's still being wrestler run, because even though he never really got in the ring himself, apart from having his arm broken by Triple H occasionally, he has still been integral to wrestling and an important part of wrestling ever since he first threw on a toga at WrestleMania 9 and the year before in WCW, of course. So it certainly seems to me it's going to be wrestler run. That said, they do have someone above them in Tony Khan who is a fan of wrestling, certainly. That was mentioned in the statement he released today. But he is not a wrestler. He's not been that far involved in the company. He is unlikely to get too involved in the wrestling side of it and mostly be there financially. But he does have the power to do so should he decide to.
Now, we've seen and we've learned that the Khan brothers are not only the owners of Fulham Football Club over in your part of the world, up in London on the river, and also Jacksonville Jaguars, which we know here in the States. If you don't follow football, not American football, you should know that Fulham's actually doing pretty well. Other than they've made it back into the Premier League, they're a good team. They're back in the top tier. Take that with a grain of salt with the Jaguars' performance of late. He's a wrestling fan as well, so this is not just somebody throwing his deep pockets at something. He's also a fan, from what I've picked up and gathered. So, do you think that hinders or benefits this AEW venture, that he's actually a fan as well?
I'd say a little of both. It depends. Obviously, I don't know the man, so I don't know what his persuasion would be. I think being a fan will help him trust the people around him, primarily Cody the Bucks, of course, because he'll know them, he'll know their success, he'll know their track record. But at the same time, being a fan, he might look at a storyline or a bit of creative and think, maybe I could do that better.
That's scary.
It is a bit scary, but it also may end up being better. There's nothing to say that someone who isn't inside the world of wrestling can write a storyline that appeals to people who maybe weren't fans of wrestling beforehand.
That's an interesting point, because you look at a company like Progress in the United Kingdom, which I love, is essentially run by three wrestling fans, Comic and Jim Smallman and Glenn Joseph. So yeah, there's a good point to be had there, that maybe not being in wrestling could actually be a good thing. As an owner. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was the equal pay. Brandy, the chief branding officer, says that they're going to have equal pay for men and women. And I wanted to give you the platform to hear your opinion and your instant reaction on that comment. And do you think they'll be able to do that? Is it possible? And what's going to happen with that?
I think it's a bold choice. It certainly puts them a step ahead of the way that the WWE model works at the moment, but there is a reason that the WWE model works as it does. The idea being that they pay people for their drawing potential. Now, a lot of women in WWE are catching up. Ronda Rousey is very close to being the top earners. Charlotte Flair is not far behind in any way. So they're approaching that, but they still work to the model of how many eyes do you bring to the company. With All Elite, it depends how well they build these people, because a Britt Baker, with all the best will in the world, less people are going to pay to see her right now than a Chris Jericho. Now, I think it's a great move, and it could work brilliantly, but are they paying people what they will generate in income, or are they paying people in order to create a system whereby they are equally paid?
Well, there seems to be no doubt that they can pay the wages. They've already shown today that Pac, Jericho, now Adam Page, and of course the Young Bucks. So the money's there, but it's going to be fascinating to see, because I think, like you said, it's going to be hard to actually fill that. It's very easy to say that everybody gets the same rightful pay, but it'll be fascinating. They've definitely made a declaration that's going to be interesting to see them fulfill, to say the least. Another thing I wanted to ask you, and thanks again for hanging out, means a lot. Jericho, we kind of touched on it just a second ago. How can you not use Jericho as some sort of a consultant? Do you think that he's going to be... because there's really no... He didn't actually say he's going to wrestle. He's going to be there. So is he going to be an on-screen talent and a behind-the-scenes production member?
Well, it was a way back when AEW was first rumored, when we first started hearing about it. And at that time, the rumor was that Jericho would be at an equal level to Cody and the Bucks. Now, Jericho being Jericho, he will wrestle. He loves wrestling. He won't want to stop wrestling. At the same time, Jericho being Jericho, he wants to tour. because he loves touring and he loves playing music. He came out to his own music. It was a great song. So Jericho is a very hard one to pin down. I'd imagine he's going to do a bit of everything, a bit of consultancy work, of course, quite a bit of wrestling, and then there'll be patches where he just vanishes again. Jericho's one of those. He doesn't stay anywhere for long because he gets bored. So we'll see what happens in that regard. It'll be interesting.
Now, as far as AE Wrestling, All Elite Wrestling, as far as what you've heard, because we're not really in the room when the contracts are being written or looked at, as far as what you've heard, and I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but are these contracts exclusive to American soil, or are they extremely exclusive to just that brand? Do you know a way that you've possibly been hearing lately of which way it's going to be?
Well, first off, you hear quite a lot of things. Some of them are contradictory, so you do have to go with certain sources that have been good to you in the past. I'm not that well connected at the moment, but with AEW, I've been quite lucky in the connections I do have interest in the company. What I've been hearing is that they are more exclusive than a lot of people would like upon first reading. As in, there was a move recently in NXT UK to take people into a more exclusive contract whereby they will work with the company and with certain partners, but will not go out and seek their own booking. That, from what I can tell, is what's going on in All Elite Wrestling. When you look at, for example, Pac, formerly Neville, bringing his championship belt from another promotion to the Rally.
Yeah, that was very telling.
Yeah, that was a very telling moment. That says to me that this is not a man who's on an exclusive contract. You look at someone like Jericho, he can sit down, and because of his drawing power, because of his immense name value, he is their biggest draw. If he says to them, I don't want an exclusive contract, are they going to say no? So I'm hearing a lot. There could be a lot of different ways to go about it. From what I can tell, most people will be on exclusive contracts, but not exclusive to US soil, because All Elite doesn't want to limit itself to just one area.
That's a good point. I think that for certain people, you have to look at it case by case, because some people are just different draws, different type of people you have to look at.
Yeah.
As far as partnerships, you said partnerships. So we saw the Dragon Gate title right there on the stage. We got an announcement about Oriental Wrestling being partners, and they tweeted out just a few moments ago that they are, Double or Nothing. Do you think that, and I know it's literally just seconds after, but do you think that they're modeling for a first hour similar to the Cruiserweights on the WCW Monday Nitro? Are they looking at that model as a model to use on an eventual television program, which is I know is going to be far away, but do you think that's the purpose of that partnership, or am I putting Oriental Wrestling kind of too low in the card?
I would imagine they're looking at a lot of different ways to do it. That model, the WCW model, where they started with the Cruiserweights, lots of 6-mans, lots of 8-mans, lots of high-pitched action, that worked. That woke the crowd up. And you will probably know as well as I do that the Young Bucks were big fans of that. They loved that, and they worked to become that exciting start to everything before you get to the heavy hitters, the main event, all that later on. You can be that important early on in the card. So it's very much possible that they've chosen to do that. However, it's also possible that they want to get stars throughout. When you consider that Pac was not a big fan of being in 205 Live or stranded there as he was.
That's a good point.
The purpose of that show was to be that section. He won't want to be stuck in that early bit. Whether or not people are happy to do that as part of a partnership, whether or not they're being brought in to fill that role, and whether or not the exposure to them will be worth it in the long run, we'll have to figure that out as we go along.
So we got a secondary announcement. In addition to being having their first show in Las Vegas in May, we're getting a secondary show in Jacksonville. This is kind of a general question. Do you think that a ballsy approach is necessary to contest with other organizations in the United States. Do you think this is too ballsy? Are this too overambitious? Or is this about the expectations that we should be seeing from a company starting out?
It's possible that they weren't really given the choice as to where their second show would be. It's possible that in order to get the first show, they had to do the second one because it's Jacksonville. They had to give back to Jacksonville. There is an onus on owners of big teams. There certainly is over here. I believe there is over there, like the Jaguars, to encourage the community around them. And they've chosen a great way to do it. They do have to be bold. They do have to be brave. They can't sit back and wait for things to build, which is, of course, why they're spending so much money at the moment, or they would be if the contracts are active. They have to go out there and they have to draw attention. They have to get eyes. They have to have big moments and big championship matches straight from the off. They have to have big shows. They have to cram people into arenas. If they want to hit the ground running as quickly as they can, they need big signings, they need big moments, they need big events.
Now, I saw a couple of things online, just reports, obviously, just rumors and speculation. Nothing's for sure, but there's a lot of talk about them getting not only getting, but a lot of these contracts hinging on a big TV deal. And getting a TV deal would really put them right up in contention with Impact, Ring of Honor, and possibly parts of WWE programming. So what have you heard, if anything, about any TV deal, given that we saw Jericho just show up? And that's a big grab to have. I think I'm interested to hear what you think about a TV deal. Do you think that something is, there's a handshake that was done? And what's going to happen as far as the TV programming? What's your opinion on the TV deal?
Well, firstly, just touching on Jericho, he briefly had his own TV show called But I'm Chris Jericho. So there is a market for a TV show just on the back of him being in it. I'll say that for certain. When you talk about competing with the other companies, Impact have had a torrid time trying to get one dedicated slot on one dedicated channel for their duration. They've had a very bad time of that. So a TV deal can be very important. It's the TV deal that made WCW an actual competitor to WWE after all. Now, everything I've heard suggests that there are a lot of options on the table. Whether or not these are good options, I can't say. But I think a large reason to have this rally and have it broadcast on so many different mediums at once was to say, look, this many people watched this rally. This many people want to watch our program without these people announced. This many people signed up just for the name alone. That gives them bargaining power. That gives them negotiating positions. That will help them to find the right deal for them.
Were you surprised at seeing 60,000 views and are you surprised at the amount of viewership and the buzz that it's being created? Are you surprised at all, or should we be kind of chilling out a little bit, which I've seen some people tweet about in a less nice way? What do you think about the expectations of fans? Should we just cool it, or should this really be a big deal?
I'm a pretty stringent believer that no matter how big something's going to be, go in expecting very little. Mm-hmm. That takes a lot of pressure off the company. It takes a lot of pressure off the management. And if the first couple of shows aren't that good, you're going to continue watching because you didn't expect them to be that great. So it helps them in the long run. When you look at, 60,000? I think I was watching the YouTube stream. It hit about 64,000, I think was the record when Jericho was on there. I had a few other things open. I was trying to keep track of the numbers. I don't personally believe they reached 100,000, but if that's what they want to announce, that's fine for them. It was a big number. I maybe expected a little bit more based on the buzz that it seemed to generate, but it's not an ideal time for your average wrestling fan to be sitting down and putting on YouTube. And I don't know, that they didn't do too much to grab people who were already there until you had the later moments with Jericho, who was obviously there positioned as a main event.
I want to know about what you think about the timing of their first event. Is there any significance to the May timing in regards to the G1 Supercard, which will be at MSG? Is that just a coincidence, or is there some significance to that timing for their first event?
I don't for a minute think it's coincidental, but at the same time, it would again be very bold. If they plan to compete, they're going to struggle there. And it's also a bit of a slap in the face for the company that brought a lot of them forward to put themselves in direct competition like that. Now, it may just be that that's the time they could get. It may just be that they felt was the best time for a show, which is certainly possible. It's a good time of the year to go out and watch that sort of event. But I think we'll see closer to time. They may step on a few toes of it, and it may be something they regret when the actual viewing figures come in.
And you've probably not seen this yet, but I want to just get your super, super instant reaction to this. But Ryan Satin, everybody's favorite Ryan Satin. So take that as you will. He puts a tweet out from Pro Wrestling Sheets saying, fans wearing All Elite merch allegedly turned away from SmackDown Live because, of course, SmackDown Live is happening in Jacksonville today. Do you think that should WWE be worried in any way? I mean, this company's 7 days old, and we only know about a couple of signings. Should they be concerned as a company? It sounds kind of silly, but should they? I don't know. You know more about this than I do, most likely.
Well, there have been times before now when people have gone into shows for the WWE wearing PW Torch t-shirts, and what's happened is they've ended the night wearing WWE t-shirts. They got free t-shirts that night, so there's a plus to that. But Vince McMahon is a very shrewd businessman, and you'll know for a long time he wouldn't state the name of TNA or Impact. He would not state the name of competition because that is giving them free publicity. And when you've got people in your crowd wearing a competitor, it doesn't matter how big, it doesn't matter how small, it doesn't benefit him in any way. It only benefits competition. So why would he let it happen? I completely understand him saying that, and I believe he would make sure security prevented people from entering. I think it's also a big thing that AEW haven't tried to compete with SmackDown. They haven't actually tried to have their show at the same time. I think on that one they knew better.
Well, we do have the trademarks that we've seen for Tuesday Night Dynamite or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it seems that they're going to really give it a good go against SmackDown.
Say that, but SmackDown are already known to be moving to Friday on Fox.
Oh, okay, that's right, Fox.
So essentially, they're chosen a time when they know that their competition is moving away from that.
It's so fascinating. Yeah, and I don't follow WWE well enough, to be honest. I'm a New Japan guy, so I'm very interested to see how, because I thought the timing was fascinating with the May show, conveniently just after G1 Supercard, where could be the last time ROH partners with New Japan. We don't really know what's for sure happening as far as partnerships go. So do you think New Japan would be in a talent sharing kind of deal with them, or do you think they'll stick with Ring of Honor?
I suspect personally they will stick with Ring of Honor because that's a sign of respect to a long-term partner. Mm-hmm. If someone new comes along, you tend to stick with a partner you've had for longer. You've built up that trust. That's a good thing. It doesn't mean that there won't be any talent sharing. If AEW comes forward and tries to talent share, I'm sure they will be open to that. But you just wait until the moment before a big show when one of their stars is at a different promotion and gets injured. You just wait for that moment, because suddenly that partnership will all go quiet.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of time between with the G1 Supercard coming up, I'm really fascinated. I don't foresee, who knows what's going to happen, honestly. My friend Luke,
a lot of moving parts.
and it's moving by the second, really. And this was a big move for All Elite Wrestling. Whether you think they're going to fail or not, you really shouldn't. Personally, I would say, you really shouldn't wish anybody to fail as a wrestling organization or in life. I think there's plenty of space for all wrestling promotions to have some room to succeed. So, my buddy Luke mentions a good question that I'll throw in. He says, do you think that the production values of All Elite Wrestling will be better than WWE or up to par with WWE? Because WWE has really set the bar for the top production values in wrestling here in America. Do you think they'll challenge that or even be better?
I think it really depends on how they want to be perceived as a promotion. If they want to be seen as on a par with WWE from the off, it's going to cost them a lot of money for very little return. And they will need to be as good in production value as WWE. I think the standard of the rally told us a lot. The production value maybe wasn't the strongest. I have a very strong memory of that t-shirt cannon not really firing very well. A very strong memory of that. Brandy Rose nearly being set on fire, of course. There are a few kinks to work out, but I think they can if they want to. They can create that sort of production value. And really, if you're flicking between channels, if you're watching Raw or SmackDown, you go looking for a different show. If you come across something with the right production value, you might stick around. But if you come across something with lower production value, you might look at it and think, oh, it's an indie fed, it's not a big deal. If you want to be a big deal, you have to look like a big deal.
The production value is a good point because that sold me on All In. Honestly, I was going to wait and watch it later. But when I saw how good the pre-show looked, I said, I'm getting in on that. I caught the buzz, and it was a good show. It was worth it. It was definitely worth it. So yeah, I think production value can go a very long way. As far as talent from Japan, we're now seeing some Asian influence going to be introduced. Do you see any other big Japanese names coming over? As far as women or men, because I think that would really signal, that would be a real signal of intent if they were to grab some big names from New Japan and not just be strictly a I don't know how to say, like all in indie kind of federation. Because Jericho's really taken it to the next level with that signing. Do you think somebody from New Japan would jump ship?
I think a couple of people might, but I think there's going to be a lot of conversations and contract offers going on in the background right now in New Japan, because obviously with their expansion, it's been a lot of push around American talent, or at least non-Japanese talent. When you look at Jay White at the moment, tremendous talent, and he's getting a great push. And they've lost a lot of their non-Japanese stars at the minute. And because they haven't had that focus on the Japanese stars may be more willing to look at different options. So I'd imagine there's a lot of contract discussions right now. If someone big became available, then I think it would be a very dumb move to turn them down, because New Japan has been the number 2 promotion for quite a while. If you can't get the ones from the top promotion, take the ones from the number 2, Get the biggest names you can. But I'm not entirely sure people will be going to AEW and saying, look, I want to jump ship. We'll see what happens. Kota Ibushi's probably most likely.
Oh, God. What would be, like, if just playing speculation here, what would be a name or the caliber of a name from WWE to leave that would really make you say, wow? Is there a talent or a wrestler's name from WWE that would really, if they went to AEW, you would say, wow? Is there anything that would really impress you at this point? Or do you expect more of the guys who aren't really getting all the breaks at the moment. Do you think there's room for a big name, or just lower cards? Low cards?
I have a few thoughts on this, one of which I'll get to later. But firstly, there are quite a few people in NXT at the minute who may have suddenly realized that the route to the main roster isn't quite so easy anymore. When you look at who's just being called up, they are not the top names in NXT. So you look at people like Velveteen Dream, like Adam Cole, who maybe see that the grass isn't greener. They're having a great time in NXT, certainly. They're getting a lot of headlines, but they're on a captive network in that they're only on the WWE network. Maybe if you get a good TV deal in AEW, they can become much bigger deals then. Maybe they can make more money. Maybe in Adam Cole's case, he has people he wants to spend more time with, and so on and so forth.
His wife.
Yeah, for an example. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we see some of that crossover. Going beyond that, there are a couple of people on main roster. Formerly Neville here, of course. Pac has popped up, and I think people of that ilk, maybe a couple of people on 205 Live. I don't think we'll see a Buddy Murphy or a Mustafa Ali, but maybe someone like TJP would be an option. Hideo Itami.
Oh, Itami. Kenta would be...
It's suddenly an option you're interested in, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Going a bit further up, you look at Nakamura's maybe not getting the breaks and feels he could do better elsewhere. And there are a couple of people, maybe Tyler Breeze. But there's a couple where I think they have to be quite careful, because there would be a snowball effect with a couple of people. If All Elite can somehow convince Xavier Woods to jump ship, he would not go alone, and he would take some of the biggest names with him when it comes to consistent, strong matches. So I think WWE need to look after their talent a little bit more if they start to get a whiff that something's going wrong. If everything's fine, everything's fine. But if they start to feel that some of their talent are getting annoyed or upset, maybe look into that. There is one thing that would surprise me that I think will immediately put All Elite Wrestling on the map in a big way, that is absolutely achievable right now, and nobody's going to like it, but they could sign Brock Lesnar.
It doesn't seem, just from my perspective, from a fan's perspective, that that's the type of guy, and this is just from a fan's perspective, that's the type of guy that you know,
I agree completely,
the Young Bucks would want to work with.
It would put them on the map. They could stick him in the ring with Jericho, and they could have some great matches. And people would tune in. It's a draw.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
and of course, as it goes where the money is.
People doubt, why is Jericho? He only fights 3 times. You know, the Boo Boys are out for Jericho in Japan a lot, but look at what he does. He put on one of the best matches of the night at Wrestle Kingdom. Jericho's a draw. He's one of the best there is. Jericho not being a draw is an argument that I can never make sense of. But yeah, Jericho and Brock, I don't know. It would definitely rub a lot of people the wrong way, but those people would probably watch it as well.
I would love every second of it.
Let's see. Boy, do you think this can fail? I mean, can this really just blow up?
Absolutely. I think can fail. I think they've got a lot of good marketing talent, a lot of good businessmen involved. So I don't think it will fail. I don't think it'll reach the level that they're looking for straight away, but it certainly can fail. If they commit too much money, it's going to fail. They have to be careful.
Because you're saying like the t-shirt cannon and the fire and the pyro, you said things to me that were like, that just screamed TNA. And there's the fear in the back of my mind as a fan that it's just going to be something like that. But then they also have another side of me that says I have a lot of hope that there's going to be another player in the game. So what kind of expectations should we have for this company? I mean, it's very early, but what do you expect AE Wrestling to be in a year from now?
Well, starting off, I think you raise a good point in TNA. You look at people saying that, it's different in All Elite because it's run by wrestlers, it's run by this. Jeff Jarrett had been a part of a very prominent wrestling family for a long time. He knew wrestling and he knew what he was doing when he started TNA with a lot of big names. That the idea and was the same. The execution may be slightly different. I think TNA borrowed a bit too much from the Vince McMahon playbook, or in some circumstances the Vince Russo playbook. But you can start to see some of that happening with All Elite when they announce the viewing figures. Oh, this many people watching. Or for the first 20 minutes or so, you see Conrad saying about what a visionary, what a revolutionary Cody Rhodes is, and the propaganda machine starts whirring. So I don't think it started off too differently to how TNA would. Now, what I think we need as fans, and I think they need as a company, is a bit more patience. And they've started well in that the contracts, the pay doesn't kick in until they have a TV deal. They can take their time with this, and I feel that they should. I don't think we should start seeing a regular show until after Double or Nothing at the earliest, because they need to get a few more signings. They need to get a first few months of storylines laid out, sort out a few promos, build some hype on the internet, really grow those numbers. And in a year or so, if they have a TV deal, we could be seeing the first few shows, we could be seeing 5 or 6 months worth of shows. We could be seeing a product that is close to where, for example, a Ring of Honor is right now. I don't think they should be pushing beyond that at this point. Mm-hmm. They've got strong draws, that's a big advantage, and people will tune in, but they still need a very good TV deal, which of course is up in the air at the moment.
Yeah.
It could go in a lot of different directions, and I think with patience, and I think with a bit of support from the fans, rather than hype and excitement, if the fans are a bit more patient with them and supportive and accept that there are going to be a few setbacks, it could be something very special and very different.
Well, we start to see with all the t-shirt purchases, and they're very tight with Pro Wrestling Tees, so that's a fantastic avenue for merchandise sell. I mean, they've got a ready-made setup right there. So that's a huge step in the right direction. Tom, this has been fun. I want to put a pin in it for now because we could speculate for hours. And there's no doubt that that's exactly what's going to happen over the internet for the next 4 months. So we'll put a pin in it here. Tom, I just want to say thank you for jumping on at past midnight to chat with me. It's absolute.
It's no problem. I had fun.
It's absolute pleasure, man. And please follow him at Colohue on Twitter. You'll see his writings. He's got a really good article that I mentioned on the stream yesterday that you should definitely take a look at about what we do know. Of course, that's going to be changing day by day. And of course, follow PW Torch for all wrestling needs. Tom, thank you so much. We'll have to do this again in the future and be a little more prepared, and I'll have some better questions for you next time. But thank you so much for your time, buddy.
No problem with the questions. I thought it was great. It's perfect. And I'm sure we'll have other occasions. We may be more prepared. We may be less prepared. Who knows?
Well, it was a pleasure to speak to you. And thank you guys for joining in the YouTube chat. And please, subscribe, hit the like button, all that good jazz. Thanks so much, guys.